You are listening to the unscripted, unfiltered, 100% authentic podcast. I'm your co-host Mike. Joining with me is my other half of the Area Attack, Miss Jamie, and of course our wonderful guest, the beat writer from Michigan State for 24/7 Sports, Mr. Stephen Brooks. First things first, Mr. Brooks, how are you doing on this fine Thursday evening?
Man, I'm busy, guys. Not too busy to join the show, of course, but just training camp. It's in full swing. We got some interesting stuff going on up here. I got a couple thousand more words I could probably write. I'm not going to get it all done tonight. Spoiler alert, but there's a lot going on up here that's keeping me busy. So, but happy to be here talking football with you guys. This time of year, man, there's nothing like it.
Well, it's definitely an honor. I truly appreciate, and we're definitely going to value your time. And I know, I'm not too far from Norman, but I know it's a busy time for all you guys. And hey, it's the but the best part is that we're right there at the beginning of the season, which is you can't complain.
Right, right. A week from this Saturday, I'm going to be enjoying every moment, every second of college football that's on my TV. The last weekend before I have to start covering it, and it's work. Saturdays become work at that point.
Yep.
So I can't wait. And just in the college football fan in me, I cherish these bye weeks, week zero, bowl game, early bowl game season, all that stuff, where I can just lounge around for 12 hours and get straight college football nonstop. I miss those days as much as I love working in the industry. I miss those days a lot. So the first one coming up here is always a blast.
That gives you a different perspective too. Just you're obviously you're in the industry, so that's what you do for work. And we always want to do what we love as a passion for work. That's what makes it not work.
Right.
But I could definitely understand. Whereas when I was coaching gymnastics, so I was so immersed in it 24/7, and then sometimes just being able to sit back and watch it as a spectator. Finally, it was like, this is so nice. I don't have to stress out. I can just enjoy the competition. And so I feel you.
I've been doing this close to closing in on a decade now. And I still,
Wow.
get up in the morning and check the schedule. And it's like, oh man, TCU, Texas, top 25 game or something. Oh, at noon. Oh, I'm going to be, parking my car and walking 20 minutes to the stadium for my 3:30 kickoff that I have to cover. And so I'm going to miss basically all of that game, aren't I? Okay, well, oh, they got Hawaii at midnight at least? Okay, give me that one. So there's just I still haven't processed like that. I'm not going to be able to get to watch all the games I want to watch on any given Saturday. And so just every week it's a little tiny gut punch when you got to head to the stadium.
Absolutely.
Well, of course, Steve, and of course, Michigan State. And I know we talked a little. I know you mentioned it really prior to the show. Is I think Michigan State's everybody's curiosity when it comes to this upcoming season. Of course, phenomenal year last year, finishing 11-2, I believe in the top 10. Of course, winning the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl as well. Mel Tucker's got this program really turned around. I'm gonna be honest with you, pretty quick from my own opinion. Of course, I'm not I don't follow the Big Ten too well, but kind of recap 21 and what's the expectation like in East Lansing for Michigan State?
Sure. So 21, I mean, man, they couldn't have really been farther off the radar. And really, I almost have to go back to 20 because this is the thing that even now, folks don't really realize about Mel Tucker is he got hired on February 12th, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And think about what was going on March 12th, 2020. It's not like he got hired in December of 19 or
Right.
January of 2020, where he had a couple weeks, a couple months to at least evaluate his roster or even shoot. Some people got to sign a couple, recruits that they recruited in December, in terms of new staffs. He got there in February. He didn't have any of that. And then, the world flipped on its head a month later. So 2020, it affected everybody. No doubt the pandemic affected every college football team. I don't think it affected any program worse than Michigan State, though, because nobody else hired their coach that late. And there's a whole lot that went into that deal. But I say that to say they didn't have any of the normal run up to 2020 or to that season. 2021, you saw some of those benefits. They had their first spring ball as a staff together. They had their first winter workouts, as a staff, as a program.
Yeah.
Through summer, summer was fine, was connected and uninterrupted, unlike 2020. So that was all part of it. The return of normalcy, and you could see these coaches actually doing what they're getting paid to do. Whether it's a strength coach, whether it's a head coach, whether it's a position coach, they actually got time with their players. That's part of it. The other part of it is they flipped over their roster in a big way. I think they had from 20 to 21, I believe they had 28 to 30-ish players leave the program.
Yeah.
And they brought in 15 new scholarship transfers. So there was a major overhaul of personnel. And almost everybody that they brought in, was just being blunt, was a higher caliber player than the guys that they were losing just about every time. So they came out on the right side of that equation, and they just had had a more talented roster. They fixed their 2 deep from 20 to 21 fairly quickly to where that top 22 was pretty dang good, as we saw. They won 11 games.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is that in that transfer influx and roster overhaul, they found a guy named Kenneth Walker from Wake Forest, and turns out he was one of the best players in the country. Who knew? And then they rode his back to 11 wins. But there's subtext to all that, and those are sort of some of the main reasons that led to what that was. Kenneth Walker was just a special player that lifted them. That was not an 11-win team, guys. Like talent-wise, across the board, that wasn't a team you'd say they're going to go win 11 games and win a New Year's Six game.
Yeah.
No, they outperformed their abilities by far. They maximized that roster, but that was not sort of an 11-win team. They got elevated by having a legitimate superstar, and the rest of the team was just pretty solid and had taken a step forward, as I said, with that a little bit of that enhanced depth and that more quality 2 deep.
For sure. We all enjoyed watching Kenneth Skywalker last season. I mean, it was a treat. Talent of a player, and you could just tell. And I think you hit the nail on the head just from watching from an outsider's, perspective. That he really did elevate that team. He's the kind of player that makes everybody better around him, and those are definitely the kind of guys that can really, really change the culture and the trajectory of a program, for sure. So. Yeah, I mean,
you talk about culture. Sorry, not to cut you off. You talk about culture as he came in as a transfer, and they say that he was one of the biggest factors in sort of implementing this new culture that really didn't get implemented in the 2020 season. Ask anybody about Kenneth Walker, and they'll say he was the hardest working dude in that building from day one. Never took a rep off, never loafed, and it's insane to think about like how good he was and like that he was putting in maximum effort apparently behind the scenes every single day, and that's something that maybe. His impact will be remembered here for a long time, not just the stats in the games, but like what he did behind the scenes left a mark. I know for sure.
You looking at Kenneth Walker, of course, I'm a fan of his just by how he approaches himself and, of course, how he plays a game. What's the offense going to look like? Obviously, it's going to be a little notch down from last year, but any difference what we're going to see from 21 to 22 without Kenneth Walker this year?
Oh, yeah. He was such a big part of it. And here's the thing. They were incredibly balanced last year as an offense, and he allowed that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were 55-45 run-to-pass percentages, and he allowed that to happen. I mean, the balance was their calling card, and even their passing game was all built off of him. Their play-action game was deadly. I want to say they scored on 5 flea flickers, maybe 6. They ran them almost every week, which is just absurd, but it kept working because you had that guy back there and you hand him the ball, everyone's going to freeze. And flea flickers, all of a sudden, they really start working more often than you would think. I texted a college coach at a different school after they had run it like 3 times. And I'm like, hey, just out of curiosity, how many times can you run a flea flicker in one season? He said, I used to think it was once. He's like, but apparently I'm being proven wrong. I was like, okay, I just wanted to check. So, yeah, that was pretty good. And but to actually answer your question, Mike, I think those roles are going to have to reverse. So Kenneth Walker was your strong hand last year. He would get you out of trouble. He was your tone setter. He was everything. The passing game backed it up. That's going to have to reverse this year, I think. I think they're never going to go away from that balanced mentality. They're not just going to become, Mike Leach, Texas Tech, and throw it 60 times a game. But the strong hand, the dominant lead dog has to be, I think, the passing game this year. And that's no given. When you talk about this team, Peyton Thorne comes back as a second-year starting quarterback. He's got to take a step forward. He can't just be the same guy as last year because he was a good quarterback alongside Kenneth Walker. But when Walker was not going off, there were some games and some moments where Thorne in the passing game didn't pick up the slack.
Yeah.
And now that's obviously going to be the whole deal this entire season. So you look at Thorne coming back, you look at Jaden Reed, who's I think a potential All-American candidate, all Big Ten guy for sure. As his top receiver. And they've got a plethora of other quality receivers. They got a really strong tight end group now. All the talent and experience sort of skews to the passing game.
Yeah.
to that's where I get that idea of like, if they're going to maximize this team again, the passing game has to be out front as the flag bearer. The running game maybe has to be the co-pilot this time. Not that they're just going to abandon it completely. Don't get me wrong there, but the way that it was last year, the running game, passing game, I think those will be reversed this year if they're going to maximize who they are.
I could definitely, I definitely had that feeling going into this season that it would kind of flip. And, you know, I was curious about the other, like the receiving core, and if Peyton would be able to really step up into that, into more of the guy to lead the team, you know, versus just kind of, you know, relying on the run game to set up the pass game. That's kind of that was always my biggest question. Now I am also curious on the defensive side of the ball, because you guys also had a very, obviously it's Mel Tucker. We know we know he's going to have good defenses, right? Just seems like you wonder if they can also keep that same trajectory on defense that they had last year going into this year as well.
They want to, at least in the back end, they want to reverse the trajectory, because they ended up, they gave up way too many passing yards. And, you know, you guys know you can cut numbers any different kind of way to sort of make your point. But they were 130 out of 130 in passing yards allowed per game. Now, again, I think they faced more passes, more passing attempts than almost anybody, maybe more than anybody.
Yeah.
They're like top 5, I think, in passing attempts against them. So, you know, there's, again, you can cut it up and dice it up and look at it 10 different ways. But the fact is, they still were too weak back there in their pass coverage. And a lot of it had to do with the secondary. A lot of it had to do with the linebackers in this system that just weren't really up to the task of playing their zone drops and being sticky the way they needed to be in the middle of the field. They were very vulnerable when opposing passing games were targeting their linebackers and finding spaces over the middle. That was sort of a weakness that really kind of just went along kind of quietly last year. But when you watch back and you talk to people now, and they're out of the heat of the moment, they kind of go, yeah, our linebackers, you know, really weren't up to par, you know, last year at times. So that had a piece of it. Their pass rush would run hot and cold. If you look at their numbers, they're like top 10 in sacks total sacks on the year, but sack rate, they were like middle of the pack nationally, again, because they faced a lot of passing attempts.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, because I mean, I remember the front obviously being better than the back half of the defense, but I would have not have guessed that was the way that it fell, to be honest with you. You know, just watching the team as a whole, that's why it's surprising, because as a whole, the team, they really played as a unit. Like the whole team played as a unit. And when a team does that, it's kind of crazy to actually go back and look at the stats and numbers and see kind of where the cookie crumbled.
Right. There's a good point. They're very opportunistic. You know, at the end of this, after 13 games, maybe some of the numbers are a little ugly, but they were a very opportunistic defense, resilient defense. You know, I mean, you hear it on Sundays all the time, bend but don't break, but like they personified that for a long, long time. And then later in the year, like physically, they did break. Like they got the injuries piled up in the secondary, and Ohio State just sort of, you know, off with their head. And then Purdue, they were a little dinged up, and they lost that game. So that's what I was saying. You know, their top 22 was better. Their starting lineups could go out there and compete with a lot of folks. But once November came around last year, and you had a couple bumps and bruises across the board, offense, defense, special teams, that's where you saw the losses come. Both their losses were in November. And look, Ohio State was going to beat them with blindfolds on. That didn't really matter. But the Purdue game, you know, they stumbled their toe there right after beating Michigan.
Yes.
The game before, they were beat up in the secondary a little bit, and just they didn't have the quality depth to survive, I think, an entire season that way. And so that's kind of what you saw. But to your point, they were an opportunistic defense and just came up with some plays when they needed to. You know, even if the end of the day, the final ledger maybe doesn't look that great in some areas, they won them the Nebraska game with a late pick in overtime. The Indiana game.
Nope.
Yeah, the Peach Bowl, they sealed it with a pick six.
Thanks for reminding me, Steven. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. You said that. Yeah. That one.
That one, exactly.
I won't talk about the punt return then, because, gosh, I bet you're still having nightmares about that.
Oh, my God. I can't even discuss it. I can't even think about special teams without having like a PTSD anxiety attack. I'm just so glad we have Bill Busch, and I really truly believe that piece of the puzzle is definitely going to be fixed this year, and I don't foresee that causing us the heartache that it did last year, because we lost a lot of games just by
Oh,
stupid
heartbreakers.
teams
Well,
stuff.
here's how I can tie it all in together, guys. Because like Jamie, you're talking like, and I'm of that mindset that the pendulum has to swing back for Nebraska this year, right? Like they had too many bad breaks, too much bad luck, too many close games that they lost. The pendulum has to. We've always watched enough college football, it swings back.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to Michigan State. They went 4-0 in one possession games last year. I want to say 5 or 6-0 in single digit games.
Yeah.
As we all know, that swings back. And that's when I say they weren't really 11 wins good. Like they maximized themselves. They overachieved in a lot of ways. And you go 4-0 in one score games just probably doesn't happen. And that factors into my prediction for this year. And it makes me think of Nebraska, why I think they'll be better this year. That just doesn't happen in college football. The breaks come back to you eventually, especially if they all go against you. It sort of reverts back to the mean. And that's, unfortunately for Michigan State fans that read and watch me and everything, I think that's going to swing back on them this year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about the secondary, of course, for Michigan State. And you guys picked up, which is, in my opinion, a pretty solid corner from Georgia, Mr. Amir Speed. I think he's 6'2", 6'3", something like that.
6'3" listed, yeah.
Very talented kid, of course. Kind of giving that stability in that secondary. How is he going to mold into that secondary? Of course, something that obviously was a pretty, in my opinion, maybe an upgrade for you guys in the secondary. How is that going to be looking for Mr. Speed this year?
Yeah, so when you finish dead last in passing yards allowed, you got to do something. And so they went out and got a corner from Georgia, who we all know plays great defense. He started 3 games on that defense last year that won the national title. Some people were saying was maybe the best college defense ever. I mean, I don't really want to get into that, but a very good defense nonetheless. He started 3 games on there before he got hurt, and then he was on special teams and everything. So proven player, older player, not a guy you've really got to season up and everything. And Mel Tucker even knows him. He knew him from recruiting him out of high school.
I was back in the day. I was wondering if there was a connection there.
Yep. So when he was at Georgia and Speed was coming out of Florida, he recruited him. I think he even coached him for 1 or 2 years and then moved on and blah, 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 and circle back. Here we are. The first thing, his name's Speed, but the first thing you hear about is size all the time. Everybody says he's big, he's tall, he's big. You never see a corner this big. He blasts out the sun and everything. And you hear that enough, and I'm like, okay, I get that part. I think he's pretty big, but can he play football? Can he play corner? Can he flip his hips? But I have to believe he can, because he pretty much has been taking first team reps since he got here. So, and I do think, those physical, those measurables are an advantage. You don't see corners like that. So, maybe he doesn't have to be the best technician necessarily, or doesn't have to have the scheme down front to back, but he could just bully you at the line maybe, and that's enough to be his edge. Of course, there's more to that, but they needed help there. It looks like he's going to be help. I do project him to start. And I think that, as bad as some of the numbers were last year, I do think some of their corner personnel is pretty intriguing. Some of their younger guys that they have coming up in the way. So it's going to be, all eyes are going to be on that back end, right away. I know that, because that was the number one weakness on that side of the ball by far last year.
I know, real quick, I'm not going to touch much on them because I want to keep this strictly Michigan State. But, Nebraska was brought up, and I know this is probably like the 3rd or 4th time I'm going to ask this question, so I'm just sure Jamie's going to roll her eyes. But if Scott Frost has another poor season at Nebraska, could this be the final year of the Scott Frost experience in Lincoln?
Well, I mean, I don't feel super qualified to answer that, just because I don't know, the temperature necessarily.
Right, exactly.
But from my vantage point, yes. I mean, anything less than a bowl game, and he's gone. I mean, it seems like he was teetering on the edge this year, and very well could have been gone. So I did think, for the record, that I thought it was smart that they brought him back. We talked about that pendulum. I mean, how close they were. I didn't think it would have been smart to burn it to the ground and bring somebody else in and start from scratch. Play it out again. I know he's sort of dangling in the wind, and he's got a new OC and everything, and we'll see how that works out. I thought it was a right move to bring him back. I think that pendulum will swing back. I think they got enough talent. I still think he's a solid enough coach. But yeah, if they're not even in a bowl game, if they're sub 500, then he won't even make it to the end of the season, I'm sure. Yeah,
I can see that. No, just kind of curious, kind of from an outside, of course, definitely Just kind of curious. But of course, speaking with keeping that, but going back to Michigan State, could this be a year? I know, you know, you never know what may happen. Could the Spartans actually be a factor in the Big Ten East this year and maybe get the chance to be in the Big Ten championship?
They could. They could. I'm not predicting that, but I'm not ruling it out as an impossibility. Look, nobody saw last year coming. They were picked dead last in the East in the preseason media poll. Vegas had an over/under for, I think, 4.5 wins. Maybe it was 3.5 even.
Yeah,
I think it was 4.5. Yeah, it was very, very low. So they came out of nobody expected that. And so I preface, I'd say, if I say something that sounds ridiculous in 6 months today, okay, it is what it is.
It's college football,
exactly. Yeah.
But they could though, they've gone through they've done another offseason sort of turnover. Another 20 or so kids, I want to say. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but about 20 kids left the program again between the end of the regular season, after the bowl game, and after spring ball. We're talking about like 20 some departures from that between those 3 periods, and they brought in 8 new transfers this year. And whereas a year ago, those 15, of course, you had Kenneth Walker up here, you had a couple starters and contributor guys here, and then about half that 15 was like stock and stash guys that you're not even counting on right away. This year, with their 8 transfers, almost all of them will start or will definitely be high-level contributors off the bench, high snap guys off the bench. So it's more targeted, I think, that way. And so I say all that to say, I think they're a more talented, deeper roster this year. I've mentioned a few times their top 22 was pretty good last year, but they didn't have championship depth to compete in November. Now they're closer to that. I think player 1 to player 100, this is a better collection of football players. There's more talent on the field out there, but I don't think they're going to win 11 games. And I don't think there's a superstar like Kenneth Walker, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
Top to bottom, there is more quality in there. Maybe not the high-end superstardom, but there's more quality from 1 to 100, I think. And yet they have a harder schedule. Wisconsin comes in this year as a crossover. They got to go out to Washington, which really, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but a lot of people around here are nervous about. Minnesota comes in over as a crossover game. That's a tough one this year. So, and of course, I got to say it one more time, that pendulum, of the close games, I think it'll swing back on them. So I don't see them winning as many games this year, even though I do think they have a better football team, if that makes any sense.
It does. It definitely does. I think we've all kind of, brushed on it, but you had that guy that elevated that team. And sometimes that's a great thing, and it works out, in Michigan State's favor. But also there's something to be said for a more complete roster as well, that can also, flip the script versus just having that one guy that elevates a team. So I'll be interested to watch Michigan State. I think that they're the team that's most intriguing for me, that I just really don't have a feel for. Like all the other teams, I feel like I have a really good feel for what's going on and what they have coming back, and how they're going to look and what to expect. But I don't have that with Michigan State, and it's probably because Mel Tucker hasn't been there for a long time, and they're just kind of finding their identity and getting their groove. And whereas a lot of the coaches in the Big Ten have been there forever. So you really know you really do know what to kind of expect year in and year out, what kind of teams they're going to field. So I'll be interesting. I would love to see Michigan State eventually. My Ohio State friends are going to hate me for this. I'd love to see them eventually, knock them off and get somebody else into the championship in the East. It was nice having Michigan there last year, honestly, because it wasn't Ohio State, for
it's a different change the pace a little bit.
Yeah. It's nice. It was nice to have Michigan and Iowa, even though I hate Iowa, but it was nice to have teams. I know. I'm sorry. Everybody knows I hate Iowa, so it's not a surprise to anybody.
Sure. No, to Mike's point, I realized I didn't even answer. I do think they could end up as a dark horse contender if everything breaks right. I'm not predicting that. But if all these transfers work out and there's some guys that are better than we expect and some guys make some development, they could be, much like last year, they could come out of nowhere and be a dark horse. Everything just sort of wrapping up here, like everything hinges on the offensive line to me in terms of Michigan State's ceiling. It's another situation where their starters, I think, could be fine, could be average, could be middle of the pack Big Ten, kind of like last year. The depth is almost non-existent behind them, though. So 1 injury, 2 injuries, or if just these guys if they're just not as good as I think they can be, the entire, then that's when we're talking about 6, 7 wins, 8 wins maybe, as opposed to 9, 10, 11 type of range. So the offensive line will determine the ceiling of this group, and there's some real questions up front there. But I think if they can be decent, then they've got enough pieces there. I expect the defense to be better. Then yeah, if that line comes together, I could see them being a dark horse.
You sound like me with Nebraska. I have no idea. I have no idea what to expect out of our offensive line. I mean, I'd like to think it can't be worse than it was last year, but I mean, we all know when people say that, it gets worse. So,
yeah, it's a scary position.
A lot of success depends on our offensive line this year, because I mean, really, realistically, the talent level everywhere else is they should be winning 8-9 games realistically.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I just don't know what to get. I don't know what's going to happen with our offensive line, and I won't know until they actually play a game against Northwestern.
Right. Exact same story. The rest of the skill positions, I think, are fairly loaded, or at least to be a high level, competent Big Ten offense. But if that line's not up to par, then a lot's going to come crumbling down, I think, sadly for them.
One thing I like that Mel Tucker's utilizing, which I still thinking, I know Lincoln Riley uses it quite a bit. Obviously this year, well, he had to really this year. But one thing I like that Mel Tucker's doing that a lot of people are still questioning whether it's good for the sport or not is he's really, and I love it, he's really actually really aggressively approaching the transfer portal. And I like that because you're bringing in your own guys, so to speak, that is going to help that foundation, of course, in East Lansing. And where I'm leading to this is this for some of these programs that maybe wasn't, I shouldn't say not much successful, but had, average year, so to speak, year in and year out. Is this going to be more of a bigger thing than actually high school recruiting at this point, from your standpoint, when it comes to Michigan State?
I don't think so. I know, look, like that's the perception on the outside is
Right.
like that they're a huge transfer portal team, and like they have brought in some pretty big numbers. But like I said, of last year, of those 15, you had Kenneth Walker, who's a national superstar, cover of the magazine guy. And I bet nobody else outside, non-Michigan State fans would struggle to name like 2 other transfers of those 15. But yet they're still labeled this portal program and this and that. So it's I don't think perception is exactly reality in this case. Mel Tucker will tell you, he's been asked this 100 times, and word for word, he will say, the foundation of our program is going to be high school recruiting. That's like, he always ties it to the NFL. He says that's the draft. That's how you build your team, build your franchise. The portal's free agency. That's how you supplement. That's how you patch holes. We got receiver had a junior year we didn't expect. He's off to the NFL. Okay, we need a guy real quick. Who's out there? Offensive lineman blows out his knee in the bowl game. Better have an experienced left tackle in here. Let's go see what the portal's got. So it's never going to be the first aisle that he shops down, but he also knows, and this is something else that he'll tell you anytime you ask him, is that it allows you to not reach in high school recruiting. Okay, so that 3-star that I'm iffy on, he's maybe an inch short for me, but I kind of like him, I kind of don't some days. You don't have to go sign that guy anymore. And then 3 years later, you're like, man, why did I recruit that guy? I need that scholarship for another corner or something over here. That's what he always says, is it allows you to not have to reach in the high school level, whereas you can maybe address a quicker need, get a more proven guy. And we've seen, obviously, the benefits in some cases where a guy's just bigger, and more mature. They've played some college football. They've been through the grind of training camp. And in some cases, that's just a heck of a benefit, to bring right in as a plug-and-play situation, as opposed to even going to get the 5-star number 1 linebacker in the country out of high school. You can maybe do a little more with the older guy who's coming from UNLV. So that's his philosophy, and I think the way they're recruiting, I believe it. I'm not just trying to parrot his words word for word, but the way they're recruiting, I believe it. That he's recruiting at a level that Michigan State really hasn't seen consistently at all in the internet 24/7 rivals rankings era. So he's going to bring in a higher level of caliber than Michigan State's used to, and I think that truly will be the bedrock of where this thing goes. But he's no dummy. He's always going to have an eye on the portal, and when you get a Kenneth Walker out of there, I mean, it probably inspires you to keep looking and see what type of gems might be out there. So it'll always be a part of it. And I think everybody's still figuring it out to a degree, but he's always been very, very clear that it's only supplementary. It's not really the main focus of how they acquire talent.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I did not hear that until now. I like that from Will Tucker. That's an excellent way of looking at it. I like that.
Yeah. He
like
always
that.
said, it's free agency for the portal, and he has recruiting department people just assigned to the portal that just sitting there every half hour or so, refresh, and just see who's in there. It's their job to know who's in the portal, when did he get in there, what's his story, do we need to get on him? And he likens that to an NFL scouting department where you have the pro scouts who scout the other 31 teams, and then you have the college scouts who obviously get you ready for the draft. So, his NFL, his decade in the NFL, shows through quite a bit, in what he's got going here.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way to look at it.
Yeah, it really is. It puts me, I won't lie. It actually puts my perspective towards the transfer portal a little bit more different now. I like that. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, is it good for the sport? Like when fans don't know who's on the roster every year, and wait, number 5, I thought that was Joe Smith. Now it's Tom Johnson. Like what's that?
Exactly.
And does that plaque factor in with? And look, guys, this could be a whole nother podcast, but the Big Ten expansion and conference realignment, do all these things slowly erode the fan interest that got all of us loving this to begin with? Will it pass down to another generation if it's so different the way we're trending? And I don't know. There's things to consider, but in this early sort of gold rush day of the portal, Mel Tucker's going to take any inch he can to get better, and he's proven that you can use it to get better. So that's how he approaches it.
Now, if somebody can just change my mind about the NIL, I actually may be on board with both of these programs.
I don't know if I want to open this can, but what's the NIL stance that needs to be changed?
I can see where. So I know someone. He played ball at Kentucky Christian University. It's a very small NAIA school in Grayson, Kentucky, where I started my college ball at way back in the day. No, 07. And so he just quote unquote transferred from KCU to Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, with Coach Fickle. I'm gonna go watch him up in here in Tulsa. I think it's the 17th or something in October. I don't know. But anyway, point of the story is the NIL. So I get some of the standpoints when it comes to it helps the players, especially some of them that maybe came up from maybe not so much of a good financial situation at the house. So I get that part. But I also get the same standpoint, I guess I'm still leaning on, is a lot of people would still say the same as well as, let's just say 3 years, because a lot of them don't stay the whole 4. But let's just say 3 to 4 years, you got your room and board paid for, literally everything's paid for. Why do you need more type of thing? So I don't know. I see both sides of the standpoint. I'm kind of like, well, I see that though too, because you are getting a quote unquote free education. But at the same time, I don't want a college kid to come up and literally have to work a job and then do school and then do practice and then do who knows what else to try to make at least somewhat of a living during his college days as well too. So I see both, but I'm just still on the fence of how I should what's the best route for me to really approach this NIL.
I gotcha. And that's a whole nother podcast, so we can get into it. But
absolutely.
It's just 2 quick things. The first would just be players these days. It is a job. College football is a job. You can't go bag groceries after practice or before practice and then hustle over to the facility and change into your gear real quick and go out and meet the boys on the field. Like, you're at football all day, and like school even is an afterthought. There's no time for them to make any money to support themselves on the side. So that's just one of many reasons I support it. And then the other one I would say, Mike, is just today, Google Big Ten media contract and look at some of those numbers and dollar signs and tell me that these guys that are the product. They are the product that we turn on the TV to see.
Yep.
Tell me that they shouldn't get something. I mean, that's
my point too. Exactly. Absolutely.
I look at it as, I don't think that this is my issue with NIL. I 100% think that they should be able to capitalize off their likeness, like 110%. You should be able to capitalize off your own name and what you accomplish on the football field. I have an issue with like just paying players to come in to play football for you. Like just I mean, like just like these outrageous numbers that you've heard, 50,000, 100,000, there's a lot of rumors around Texas A&M and what they've paid those DNs to come in and play for their school. That's where I have an issue. Like I don't, that's not what NIL was intended for. And that's where, it kind of, it just puts a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth to where I think you're losing the amateur side of college football. Again, 100% you should be able to capitalize off your jersey sales and using your name and all of that stuff. I just don't think that you should get 50 grand just to come play at the school.
You should have the same opportunities that Joe chemistry major has, right? Like every few years we'd see these stories of like somebody has a YouTube channel who was making like $5 grand a month or something, like, decent little money, not changing his life, but taking decent little money. He's a punter at Arizona State or whatever. He does karaoke videos or whatever. And he was getting suspended by the NCAA or, they made him shut it down. There's always stuff like that. And it's like, man, if I'm just a anatomy major, he can do that. So why can't I as a receiver, So that's part of it. But I'm with you, though, in terms of the rollout and the lack of regulation and just the wild, wild west era of it in recruiting, because that was the whole deal. Don't do it in recruiting, but it was like, don't put it. There's no enforcement. It's like you put the toothpaste out of the tube and just hoped everybody would play by the honor code or something. And very quickly, we're 14, 15 months into this. And it was a race to the bottom like that. It became a recruiting thing immediately, even though it wasn't supposed to be. So I don't know how you get your hands around it, but I understand your sentiment. Like, it's not supposed to be this pay for play thing necessarily. And I do think maybe there will be some market correction, though, on its own after, I'm sad to say it, but after maybe one of these $1 million quarterbacks busts or just the wrong booster writes a check for a tackle who doesn't pan out or whatever. Once enough of those, the opposite of success stories come out, I do think the money people might tighten up a little bit and go, wait a second, I'm fine with paying the freshman All-American, but I'm not fine with paying the 5-star who hasn't done anything yet, Yeah, I do think we might see a natural shift to more of like proven athletes getting these deals, production-based NIL stuff versus just here's a deal to get you on campus and now we hope you produce type of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope Ohio State learned their lesson with the whole Quinn Ewers thing.
This is, like I said, it's the wild, wild west. So it's just people don't even know what the rules are. So are there any rules? And I might as well try this anyway and see what happens. I don't think we're going to be out of that weird cycle for a few years of people just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what they can get away with, honestly, in this space. And maybe eventually, again, either the market corrects itself or some stricter guidelines come into play. But I mean, we all know, guys, top talent's been getting paid to go to different colleges since the beginning. So you're never going to fully stop every element of that. No. But yeah, like I talked about the conference expansion with the portal, guys changing teams every year, guys getting paid huge money just to show up. These things, I mean, all at once, maybe if these were all a decade apart, we could have digested them and absorbed them and moved forward. But I love college football, guys. I love it. It's my job. I freaking love it.
We all do. Yes.
Yeah, and I know. I'm worried that the confluence of some of these factors all coming together here, man, I worry about the erosion of that interest. That made us all love it to begin with. So it's kind of where not to end it on a bummer note or anything, but that's where the conversation kind of took us.
No, but it's 110% correct. And the other flip side of it is now you've got people, kind of getting away from the NCAA, and it sounds like we're leaning more towards a college football commissioner, type days. And then at what point does it stop? I mean, at what point does somebody say, and maybe we need a college football commissioner. Maybe we need that person to come in and be like, okay, we get all the conference representatives together. There is technically one guy who's the commissioner, but we've got this board of regents or whatnot. And some of these regulations get stamped out. So it's a more level playing field for the whole of college football, which hopefully keeps the values of what we have grown up with and known and love and are so passionate about, keeps the that kind of era of nostalgic still within the game tradition.
Yeah, it is. The NFL is a great product. They're a great league. They're great at what they do, but the reason that we love college football is the differences from the NFL.
Yes.
You know, for most, I don't want to speak, I guess, necessarily for you guys, but I know most people I know, it's the differences, you know,
Yes.
and the different contours of college football that make it so just amazing. Why folks are diehards for Saturdays the way some folks are diehards for Sundays. You don't need to turn it into the NFL. Is all I'm saying.
Yes.
We've got a very, very good thing going here. I understand change is inevitable, and it's never going to go back to the way it was when I was a kid or you guys were kids. But man, I just hope we can keep this all together and something that's at least semi-recognizable, right?
Yes.
I'll stick to what I said as we wrap up the show. I'll stick what I said, I think, on somebody's podcast, is it won't be anytime soon, but I still personally believe college football will be at least the money making that the NFL is at eventually. I don't think it's going to be within the next 5 years, but it could be. But I think the brand's really starting to kick off. And, I love it. If, I'm a big Denver fan, but Bronco fan, but if I had to pick, college football would be my first option compared to pros. So
sure. And it's just, it's that increasing separation between Oklahoma and Tulsa. I think you mentioned Tulsa, or just Michigan State and Western Michigan. They've never been close, of course. They've never been peers, but they're growing further apart every single day. And if you really get to this little select, old boys club of 30 teams, is that really college football that we love? And I don't, again, that's a whole other podcast, but these things concern me. And yet, here I am jazzed up that we're, a couple weeks away from
9 days away, I think.
yeah. So get me in a stadium and all those concerns. And I don't even know what that means. Transfer portal, get it out of here. Whatever. Kick the ball off, and I'm locked in. So as much as I've griped about existential things, man, just get the band out there, get some people in the stands, and I'm ready to go.
That's what we do in preseason, though. What else are we supposed to do? These are the things we're supposed to do in preseason, because once the season starts, then we're in the thick of it, and we can really focus on the games and the players and the meat of the sport that we love. So
it's existential crises and just worrying about players that you'll never see on the field. That's every fan that talks to me these days. Is our backup punter any good? Is our fifth tight end going to be ready to go? I'm like, take a breath. It's almost here. Just calm down. You need to log out for a little bit, buddy.
I know. Go find a different hobby.
Right. I appreciate the passion, but sometimes you get to a point of training camp where you can get lost in the weeds for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, final question for you. It's the big one, the $1 million question. Obviously looking over the 2022 schedule, and what's your prediction on this year's Spartans and Mel Tucker?
I got them at 8-4, and one of the biggest factors for me is just even if it doesn't make sense necessarily, just that pendulum effect of them winning so many close games last year. There's no way they're going to be able to do that again. So I think Minnesota coming in on the schedule, that's a toss-up game. I have them losing at home. That they probably wouldn't have lost last year, and Wisconsin comes on this year. I think they lose that game. And then I have losses to Ohio State as a guaranteed loss. No, they're not in their league. And then I have them going on the road and losing to Michigan too. That'll be Mel Tucker's first loss to Michigan.
Yeah.
So I really like what Michigan brings back this year. I know Michigan State fans are going to hate me for that, but I think Michigan's got a really good team coming back again this year. So 8-4 is what I got them. And in a vacuum of year 3 of a staff, that's good. But when you go 2 to 11 to 8, it feels a little weirder. But that's progress. 8's still going to be progress as long as they continue to recruit the way that they are off the field. And I think that will allow them to do that by going 8-4. So that's where I'm at for now.
Sounds good. That seems like that's kind of where I was, predicting them to be at as well. You could win one of those toss-up games, Minnesota, Wisconsin, or they could both go your way, or they could not both go your way. So it's hard to say, week in and week out of the Big Ten it's a grind, and there's a lot of games with a lot of teams that can swing one way or the other really quick, and you just don't really know, especially going into the season where you haven't seen anybody.
Right. And everything could break right, and maybe they go 11-1, and just lose to Ohio State, and then they're back in that position. But big picture to me this season, they just have to win enough. I don't realistically think they're going to win a title, but of any kind, Big Ten or beyond. But they just have to win enough to keep this momentum going that was generated last year. That's followed up with the 22 recruiting class. That's followed up with this summer's 23 recruiting class. They just have to win enough to keep this train rolling. Nobody really thinks this is a title team, but just don't fall on your face and embarrass the program, to where these 5 stars that are now calling you back, stop calling you back. They just have to sustain, I think, and then they'll really be off and running once they can get a couple of these classes brought into campus the way that they're recruiting right now.
Yep. And I mean, hey, the good thing is you've got Mel Tucker locked up for a while. So
that's and I said it at the time. It's that number popped off the screen, and everybody went whoa with the 95 million. But I said at the time, wait 2 years, it's going to look like a bargain. I bet. Sure enough, we're starting to see that already. Everybody's now making 10, 11, 12 million a year. So, man, I guess I got in the wrong business.
Yeah, I think we all did. Like, why are we sitting on podcasts analyzing all this stuff?
Man. At least been an agent and got a cut, I don't even have to be the coach.
Yes, absolutely. I would have been a great agent.
Right.
Well, Stephen, we appreciate your time talking everything Michigan State football, and I'm actually looking forward to what your guys' season looks like. But you're welcome back, of course. Once the season, we may have to catch up back up and kind of get hopefully things are going your way, if not better, and hopefully we'll see another great year for the Spartans.
Hey, I appreciate you guys inviting me on. This was a blast. I'm happy to come back whenever. So you know how to reach me.
You
got it. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right,
you've been listening to the Air Raid Attack podcast. Listen to all major podcast platforms. That was a wonderful show. Stephen Brooks of the 24/7 Sports network, covering the beat writer for Michigan State. Jamie, your final thoughts on Michigan State? I think he's right on the 8-4. I'm looking at the schedule right now. I don't see a 7th win. I don't see a 5th loss. I think he's about close to probably what I would have nailed it.
I would agree with you. Like I said, I think Minnesota and Wisconsin could swing either way. So you could end up 9-3, you could end up 7-5, but they're going to be right. I think they're probably right in that 8-4 range. And again, like you said, it's just all about, I think for Michigan State, the most important thing right now is just increasing that trajectory and staying on the right path, moving forward, and, continuing on into Big Ten expansion. And, that'll help them if they can just stay on that track. It's only going to help them moving forward. So.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Great guy and a lot of info. I kind of want to pick his brain more on the expansion, but maybe we'll get that in a later time.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be interesting to hear his thoughts on that whole thing. So it is what it is at this point. I think you're looking at a college football commissioner, and that's the only way that we're going to be able to really sustain the true traditions and nostalgia of college football.
Oh, by far, I think this is just beginning, excuse me, of a different college football world that we live in. And I think if people don't like it, unfortunately, you may just have to quit watching college football, because the change is still going to happen. And I think you're going to see more changes here in the next, we guarantee OU Texas here in the next year or two. And of course, USC, UCLA. So if you don't like the changes, if you love college football but don't like the changes, I just don't know what to tell you. You're just gonna have to roll
with the times, man.
Time to catch up. I'm getting close to 40, but it's time to catch up.
Don't resist the change. Embrace the change. That's what I always tell people. It's just easier. It's just really easier in life sometimes to embrace it, and unless it's obviously a nefarious type of change. Obviously, you don't want to do that, but things that aren't going to cause anyone harm or anything like that. It's just better to embrace it and try to really live and see the positives in those changes and just move forward. Sometimes resisting change can just lead to just too much stress and heartache, and it's not worth it at the end of the day.
No, I'm with you. Stephen Brooks, ladies and gentlemen, 24/7 Sports, Michigan State beat writer, and we are still in the works of Texas's beat writer for 24/7 Sports. We are waiting for the deadline or the date and time on that one. That one, Jamie, I have to be nice.
I have to be nice too, Mike.
I don't know how this is gonna. And I'm not disrespecting her. I don't hope if she does listen. This is no disrespect to her at all. Being an OU fan for sure. I don't want my computer to burn. I don't know how this is gonna work.
Yeah,
I have to be nice. Do I wear my Beat Texas hat or no?
Oh no, I don't think we do that. I think we have to at least, we have to remember that they are fans of their program too,
Exactly.
and they're passionate just like we are about our programs. And one of the great things about, I think one of the really great things that I had learned, especially doing a lot of spaces that I did last season, which I'd like to
Oh yeah.
do. You learn that you're not that much different from Texas fans, Miami fans,
No.
Colorado. I mean, like, you can name any fan group. You're not that much different. You're all just very passionate about your team. And I think if you look at it from a knowledge base, I always want to learn as much as I can about other teams and about how they approach their season, and they're the experts. I'm not an expert on Texas, and I don't.
Oh no.
And it's nice to, especially with Steven and, last night, you got Alabama fans, we had Georgia fans. It's just nice to hear from their own fans and, writers, what they think of their team, because we come at it from a biased opinion, obviously. Like,
well, of course, absolutely.
So I think I approach things that way, and that helps, as long as they don't attack, as long as nobody attacks my
Be respectful.
teams,
Exactly.
yeah, then I don't have a problem with them. It's the idiots online sometimes where they just want to start stuff, and I'm like, okay, you're not even trying to formulate an actual like coherent opinion. You're just being a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to listen to you, or I'm going to be a jerk right back, and you're probably not going to like it. I mean, I can tell people, look, I am usually a very, very nice, like, realistic person, but there are certain buttons you can push where I call her Evil Jamie comes out, because I am a Gemini. So I am a twin. I have a good side and I have an evil side. I don't let Evil Jamie out very much, but when she comes out, you better watch out. And I can't help you with that, because she's on a whole other level. But again, that's only certain ones that button gets pushed. There are very few things that push that button for me. So
I think that's everybody, though. I'm sure. Maybe not. You never know.
No, some people are just jerks, and they just want to be that way. They just want to be grumpy old people and not listen to other people's views and opinions, and accept that that's their view and their opinion. They're not saying that it's fact or anything, or they're not attacking you as a human being. So
no, it's gonna be. No, I'm looking forward to having her come on. No, it is. That's what I was telling Steven. And then I know we're kind of just rambling, but enjoy that last few minutes, people. But that's what I was telling Steven. Like, hey, I don't know anything about Michigan State. I couldn't tell you who the starting quarterback even was, but that's perfectly fine, because this dude, now I know more about Mel Tucker and everybody else compared to what I did entering the show about 50 something minutes ago. So
that's what's great about it. That's what's great about, and that's what's great about podcasts and having, I think what really makes good podcasts and good spaces and things like that is having different people on, and having different people from different fan bases, because you and I can sit here and talk about Oklahoma and Nebraska, and I can talk about LSU and all that, but it's nice to hear from somebody else who actually is immersed in their team and in their culture. And hopefully the fans, enjoy it as well. Our listeners enjoy it. And, we bring something that they didn't know to the table, just like you saying, I didn't really know that much about Michigan State going into this season. And it was awesome. I didn't. That. So yeah, that's what I love about college football. I like to know things. Which Brian would say, I drink and I know things. I don't drink though, so maybe I just eat. Maybe I eat and I know things. I don't know.
What do you, obviously non-alcoholic? What do you like to drink?
I do like wine. I mean, I actually do like. I do identify with Tyrion in that aspect. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about Game of Thrones.
Somebody's like, what is she talking about?
I know people are probably like, what the hell? Okay, most people should know Game of Thrones. So anyway,
right?
I do like to drink wine. And then, I mean, other than that, like, I'm pretty boring. I drink water. I do like the occasional Pepsi. But yeah, I would say I drink wine, and then I'll drink Every once in a while, I'll have a Moscow Mule. Those are probably my 2 alcoholic drinks that I go. Those are my go-tos. Yeah. For those of you, I'm sure. Oh, I love coffee, which I could do a full podcast about coffee. So
I can too.
I won't even go there.
The CEO of Starbucks is joining the Everyday Attack. Speaking of beer, I'm trying not to get this company's name in there. But no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually going to try to find the sports, not to give a hint to everybody because it may not work anyway. I may try to find a beat writer for like UConn or some of these really teams that nobody.
Do you remember? Okay, but speaking of UConn, do you remember how terrible they were? Like, this is so bad. Somebody was like, "Why would you watch UConn play whoever it was when we could?" It was. Do you remember that? Do you remember when that happened? Who
were they playing?
I don't know. I don't remember. But they were both equally awful. It's going to be a battle of who was the most awful team in college football.
UConn.
I don't remember.
I'm not going to Google it because that's definitely not worth.
No, it's definitely not worth Google. But yeah, exactly.
I know. Yeah, I kind of semi-watched a little bit just to kind of see because it had been a MAC team because nobody was really there.
Yeah, no, it was a terrible football game, and there was some other game on at that time where we were like, "Why are we watching this game?"
I'm trying to figure out why I think ESPN. I was trying to figure out why or CBS Sports Network. I was trying to figure out why they even aired it, but whatever.
Oh, apparently. So breaking news, guys. Scott Frost just officially named Casey Thompson as the starter for the season.
Casey, if you're listening to this, quit liking my tweets and get on the show.
Yeah, Casey, come on the show. Come on with Trey. You and Trey come on the show and have a good time.
I really thought Casey was going to go for OU, but that's fine.
I was actually kind of surprised, but I kind of get why he didn't too. You got to think about following in your dad's footsteps.
It's absolutely.
Program, that in and of itself would be difficult to do. So I kind of understand why he would want to kind of make his own way. I was shocked that he went to Texas. Honestly, initially, that was.
Well, yeah, because he was a heck of a quarterback at Westmore High School, which is about 20. It's not far from Norman, about 20 minutes from me, probably about 15 if you take the highway. But Westmore, and he was a phenomenal quarterback, and I think that's what a lot of people kind of were upset, like, why would he go to Tech? It's like he has to go to his best opportunity. I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because at the time he was, look at the guys that OU had coming in at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you can't really say like, he should have gone to Oklahoma because I mean, really, exactly like you said, he's going to take the best opportunity.
He would have been backing up Spencer and Caleb.
Maybe some of that depended on, what happened with Dillon Gabriel too. I mean, you never know behind the scenes with recruiting Gabriel to OU, maybe there's more to that piece of the puzzle too. You just never know with recruiting.
Well, no, I like recruiting, but I'm kind of what Britt Venable says, don't commit unless you're committed. I like that. And
yeah.
But anyway, now nonetheless, Stephen Brooks, 24/7 Sports, Michigan State beat writer, joining the air raid, talking everything Michigan State, and he's predicting 8-4. So I'll have to tweet him back out once he gets that 9th win. Like, hey, you got 9 wins, make it more. No,
you were wrong.
Sally, somebody's probably going to listen to this if they really do. And no, I know people do. I know when they do listen, like, I want to keep that as a clip. I mean, I'm sure they literally would probably harass him with it, which is sad, but that's how social media works these days.
Oh, somebody is bookmarking.
Oh, absolutely.
All the time.
January,
I'm sure
August 18th.
My stuff, and they're like, I'm going to get her. But then I'm right, and they're like, well, now I can't get her because she was totally right about that.
I forgot what it was. I was on somebody's guest, and he was like, yeah, you were right about X, Y, Z. I don't even know. And the mentions are too far back. I'm not going to go flip through Twitter and figure out exactly what it was. But I'm like, if you guys really got to savor some of these clips,
I know.
I'm kind of scared for my life now. Lord only knows what else you are clipping at this point.
Look, if that's what you want to do with your life, that's what you want to do with your life. I have better things to do with my life
Yeah, I got a lot
than
more important.
to bookmark
Yeah.
random people, what random people say on a daily basis on social media.
Before
Unless
date-
it's somebody like Paul Feinbaum or Desmond Howard,
No.
I will bookmark that stuff and I will tweet at them because
Well, see, mine's Doug Gottlieb. I can't stand that dude.
oh yeah, I'm not a huge fan of his.
No, it
either.
has nothing to do with the issue. I think he's arrogant. He thinks he knows. He thinks he's hot crap, and he's really not.
Yeah.
On that note, guys, this is the air raid attack.
This is the air raid attack. You're unfiltered, unscripted.
We're definitely going to get it unfiltered.
do whatever
Wednesdays.
do whatever you want podcast. And hope you all enjoy it.
Everyone, enjoy college football. We're 2 weeks away, and we got more people, but enjoy it. Listen, review it, give us 5 stars, give us 4 stars, whatever crap it is, because that's the only way we can improve. If you guys tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly, and text us when
Absolutely.
we're not talking about you. So
Not right now, anyway. All right.
all right,
We-
guys, take care. Listen to all major podcast platforms.
All
Have
right.
a
Bye,
wonderful
guys.
day.